Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joining me today, he's a retired NHL player, performance coach, author, speaker. It's Aaron Volpatti. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Good, Alex. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
Yeah, I was born and raised in a small town, Revelstoke, British Columbia. It's just a ski town. I mean, fun fact, it's the tallest vertical ski hill in North America now. So maybe not a lot of people know about it. I think it's becoming a little more known now, but yeah, it was a great little town, about 10,000 people. And yeah, I mean, I like a lot of Canadian kids played hockey from, probably 3 years old and just really loved it. And yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time outside in the snow and yeah, hockey was a big part of that. So
As you gotten older, do you still prefer snow or do you like to mix with like the heat? Because here in Missouri, you either get cold, heat, doesn't matter each day, something different.
no, I like the four seasons. It's funny now because I live in, I mean, the Okanagan. I don't know how familiar you are with this area, and a lot of people are kind of shocked to know that we live in like wine country out here. So they're like in Canada, and so it's like a bit of a, it's our version of Napa Valley, I guess you could say, and so it's a lot smaller. But yeah, man, we get over 100 degrees here in the summer a lot of time, and then we still get the snow. So I mean, Revelstoke's a little bit different, but that's only 2 hours away. So yeah, we get all four seasons, but yeah, in the drolls of winter, I don't mind getting away somewhere warm either.
You talked about everyone in Canada kind of gets involved with hockey. Was that something you always wanted to do when you were a kid? Play hockey, be active, be with other people, things like that?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I played lots of other sports. I mean, we did like baseball, soccer, I had boxing. Like I did a lot of different things, but yeah, hockey just, it's Canada. I mean, most kids are exposed to it in some form, and yeah, it's just all about just having fun, obviously, at that age. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I love to do, and the Canucks were big. My family were fans, and we just watched them and pretended to be them, and yeah, it was just a big part of life. So,
Growing up, what did hockey teach you?
it's a good question. I think just that element of teamwork, being involved in a team atmosphere and what that looks like, and different roles. I mean, at the end of the day, it was about having fun, really, and just I think that's a good lesson too. Is just take joy in anything, really, and at the end of the day, you do something. Hopefully, you do something because you love to do it, right? And that's what I tell a lot of my clients I work with now with the coaching. It's like, well, why are you doing this? And remember that little kid that you started in your respective sport, whatever you're doing. You started it because it was fun first, right? And things progress, but it's always comes back to the fun for me. So yeah.
That's always a conversation that comes up with like parents wanting to get their kids involved, but they kind of make them so focused on that sport that those kids end up losing interest because they're getting pushed too hard. And I know when I was younger, I just enjoyed it. It just got me away from school. Like, let me go have fun on the weekends and stuff. So I kind of like that mentality that you had where just enjoy it, have fun, because later down the road, it will get important because scholarships and things like that. But enjoy being a kid while you are a kid.
Yeah, we could talk forever about that. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's too serious too soon for a lot of these kids, which it's a little bit sad in some respects where, yeah, like you said, they just you can't be a kid anymore. You got to like focus on one sport only at whatever 10 years old. It's crazy. So I think like a lot of things, and I'm not gonna say my view on other things in the world, but I will say that like a lot of things that's gone way too far one way, where it's maybe, hey, somewhere in the middle. I would say that would be one example of that. So, but it is what it is at this point.
When you were playing, did you kind of find an area that you specialized in? Was it a certain position, a certain type of play style? What was going on with that?
Yeah, I found my niche early. I was a hitter. Like that was what I don't know why. I just love to hit people. Um, yeah, like, and I was a small kid. I was the smallest kid in my town, and I remember like because you could hit earlier back then. I don't know when the kids hit now, maybe 13, 14. Like we were hitting when we were 10 or 11, I think. And
Wow.
I was a tiny kid, so I broke both my collarbones, like had shoulder problems because I was small, but I was still trying to hit hard. And yeah, that was definitely skating and hitting was kind of my game. Um, I excelled at minor hockey, as most kids that go on to play like junior do. But yeah, I wasn't really that good. I mean, like I said, I was a grinder, and I liked that hitting. I mean, when I got a little bit older, if you were to tell me I could score a goal or make like a huge hit, it would be a hit. So I don't know if that makes me a little sick, but uh, yeah, I just always had a knack for like the angles and of hitting, and it's such a mental thing. Like I mean, pretty much everything in life, there's a mental aspect. I just knew like I might be outweighed by 50 pounds, but I can go through that guy, right? It's a mindset. So I just really like that aspect of it.
You talked about being the smallest kid. Were you trying to overcome like intimidation that they might have had you thinking about those players, or were you showing them that you can't underestimate me because I can show you something that you might not expect from me?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that, and you can't let certain guys or players get to you for sure. I mean, I don't think that was there. I don't know. I wouldn't say at a young age. I think like again, once hitting came into the picture. Before that, it was just you just had fun and you just liked playing the game, and then yeah, once we were able to hit, that was always something I loved to do. And there was an intimidation factor, or again, like maybe I overcompensated for my lack of size, in terms of just because I'm small doesn't mean you can push me around, kind of thing.
Mm.
So there could have been an element of that. Yeah.
Growing up, did you have any influences or anyone that you inspired to be, or inspirations that had a big impact in your life?
I mean, my parents were a huge impact on me, obviously. I mean, I'm sure you get that a lot, but I really respected the way again, like they just said, if you want to do it and you have fun, go ahead. There was never pressure, anything like that. I had some good mentors, when I got a little older, around like 16, and I started having options of junior hockey. I had some good mentors that kind of helped me out. But again, like I wasn't that good. Like I was never supposed to go play pro hockey or anything like that. So for me, I wanted to play junior hockey and get a scholarship, and that was my goal at the time.
Why do you feel you weren't that good?
It's not that I had like a lack of confidence or anything. I just there's I don't know how many hockey players there are in the world, but Canada, there's probably 500,000 kids a year play hockey or whatever it is, and I grew up in a small town, and I'm like I was one of the best players in minor hockey in this
Mhm.
small town, but I got cut from all the rep teams and summer league teams, and yeah, you know where you stand, and I got cut from these teams, and so like I said at the time, I was just a late bloomer, right? So it took me some time to get where I needed to go, and that was fine by me, and I just kept playing as long as I could.
With Canada, a lot of competition with kids playing. Do you feel that if you lived in maybe another country or somewhere else that hockey was big, that you might have gone to these teams or not been cut in these certain situations?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I have some obviously a lot of friends that live in the US and stuff, but there's a lot of, hockey's pretty big in a lot of parts of the US now too, right?
Yeah.
Even if you go to some of the European countries. So it's hard for me to say. Like I don't know if I'll live there, but I would say Canada's definitely, a different beast in terms of um, amount of kids that play hockey. I think it's gotten worse now with like the pressure that these kids feel to just make it, or that fun is lacking, I think, a lot of the time. But I mean, to answer your question, I I don't really know. Yeah.
Was the main goal always to go professional? Did you have another dream job that you were wanting, or what were
Oh,
you
that
wanting to do?
no, and that's what I mean. That was never even on my radar. Like pro hockey was just, it didn't seem like it was an option for me. I was never drafted in the bantam draft, the major junior draft, like nothing. I just kind of snuck into junior A hockey. So yeah, again, I mean, I didn't have a reason to think I would play pro hockey at the time. Um, Sorry, what was your last part of your question?
Did you was hockey that main professional goal that
Oh
you
yeah, yeah.
wanted, or did you have a backup plan, or
No,
was
I
there
want.
a backup plan?
Yeah, I wanted to go to school and do something in sports science or exercise, physiology, kinesiology, something like that. So my plan was always to go to school, and I was chasing that dream of a NCAA scholarship. Like that was my where I wanted to go, and yeah, and like I said, I never got drafted, never was on the radar for any professional teams or anything like that. So
Did you end up going to college and pursuing that?
yeah, yeah, I did. I went to Brown University for 4 years, got my degree there, and yeah, it was a crazy old journey, and that's what a lot of my book stuff's about is that journey and what that looked like. It was a good one. So yeah, I figured I'd put pen to paper a couple years ago, or about a year and a half ago now.
Do you feel the concepts, the things that you learned in college with the subjects and the classes helped you learn more about yourself being an athlete and the things that you prepare yourself with your body, mind, and health?
Yeah, I think college allowed me, I mean, me like to become a man. I went there at 21, so I was quite a bit older, and it was a bit of an ongoing joke when we got there. I'm like as old as the people graduating, because I played junior hockey until I was 21. And but yeah, it was really good to, I mean, I would say for lots of young, young adults, I guess at that age, but to go out and sort of explore the world, and you find yourself and you find interests, and you get, there's a sense of accountability of you need to do this. And especially being a student athlete, you have places you need to be and things you need to do, and balancing that whole thing, and it gives you lots of skills in that regard. And yeah, again, just experiencing a new city, maybe a new cult. Like Brown was great. There was a ton of diversity there, so you meet with different people and people from different cultures, and you learn about that and make new friends. And yeah, there was a lot of good life lessons in that. And I mean, again, like for me, for my hockey career, it was imperative just that I became a man, and I got stronger and faster and better, and just yeah, perspectives on life and things like that, they change and took different forms. So yeah, I mean, I would have changed it for the world.
When you were a student athlete, did you kind of have that same play style, being that heavy hitter and playing like you were in the junior leagues?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like again, for me, it was just always trying to add that layer onto my game. Like I would sneak into junior hockey with the hitting and the fighting, and then kind of add a little bit of that offensive element my last year. And then same thing with the college. I snuck in with the hitting. I mean, you couldn't fight in college, so I was just hitting. And yeah, so and then but my last year I added that offensive element, and that's when I got a lot of interest from the pro teams, and it happened quick within the span of just a year. So
A lot of people see players on the ice and they think that they have this aggressive mentality off the ice. When you're not playing, did you kind of have that different personality, or did you kind of have that tough exterior with being that heavy hitter on the ice? Like, is it two different people? Aaron on the ice is different than Aaron off the ice.
yeah, absolutely. I think at a young age, I was a little bit I wasn't a cocky kid, but I was just very abrasive. And that was just me sort of finding my way. And again, a little bit was, I was smaller, and I felt this need to maybe overcompensate. So I was like sometimes aggressive off the ice. And, I was a fighter. So I kind of embodied that a little bit off the ice sometimes. And it got me into a little bit of trouble. But yeah, I mean, now and even like in college and in pro, you know, yeah, totally different off the ice. You kind of, you know, embody that alter ego of this person that you know, you take on when you're on the ice, especially when you're in like a scrap or something like that. And I, you know, I was growing as a person too. But I think a lot of people will tell you sort of the, you know, the toughest people that, you know, they play with. And I would agree, like some of the toughest guys I played with or even played against and fought are the nicest, quietest guys off the ice too. Right. So yeah, I know definitely different people early in my day, maybe not as much, but yeah, definitely now. I mean, it's yeah, I'm more of a lover, not a fighter. But obviously on the ice, it's a bit of a different story.
Were you able to, with everything that you had on your plate with school, hockey, were you able to have that social life and have that things that you could enjoy and be a part of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a big part, especially like the college atmosphere. You know, it's college. Everyone's trying to have some fun, and there was definitely an element of that. And you know, I worked my ass off to where, you know, to get to where I got to. So there was an element too for me of just, you know, blowing off steam once in a while and having some fun with everyone. And but when it was time to work, it was time to work, and that was my mentality, right? So yeah, there was definitely maybe not as much as is someone that wasn't maybe a student athlete. You know, we're, you know, playing games on the weekend and practicing during
Mhm.
the week. So yeah, it's kind of, you know, you pick your spots when you can and take advantage if you have it, you know, and kind of let loose and decompress. I think it was a big thing for me just to sort of unwind and have some fun and things like that, and being around, you know, the group of guys. Is I mean, those are the times you miss. Even, you know, when people ask me if I missed the game in college and pro, it is like the on ice stuff, but it's more about like being in the dressing room and being around, you know, the guys and the camaraderie, and you know, going for dinner, having a few beers after, and just kind of, you know, telling stories. Those are the things that you really miss that maybe you don't realize you will miss, you know. So yeah, we made time for fun, and but again, when it was time to work, it was time to work. So
I think a lot of people can relate to that, even with you're talking about being in the dressing room and enjoying the time with your fellow teammates. I think a lot of people can relate that with college, where you're living with these people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then you go back out into the real world after you graduate and you don't have that kind of lifestyle anymore. And you kind of reminisce on those times. So I think people can relate
yeah,
to what you were going through in all aspects. People in a job, they enjoy being around their coworkers, and then they move on to a different job and they still remember the good times with the former coworkers. So I think what you brought
yeah,
up is a great point.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and that's especially what people I think are missing now, you know, with COVID going on, and there's that. I mean, we're social beings, right? And
Yeah.
we crave that, you know, that environment. And when it's taken away, you know, it's really exposed, not exposed, but just really kind of double down on like, whoa, I mean, like I miss the connection of people. And when you have that experience of being in a team, and like, you know, for me it was hockey, then it's like, yeah, you miss it, right? So no, I totally agree.
What was next after college? Where did your path lead you?
So I signed with Vancouver. I mean, the day that we got kicked out of the playoffs in Brown, I signed with Vancouver the next day, and you know, I was off. I was on a plane, I think the next day after that, so 2 days after. So you sign and I had set myself up where I took a couple extra classes and stayed in Providence my junior year summer, to get an extra credit and start my. It wasn't a thesis, but it was because I didn't do honors. But you had to do God, I can't even remember. It's been too long. But like for my degree, you know, you had to do a study, and that was a credit, you know. So I did that in the summer and then took a couple extra classes the previous year. So by the time senior spring rolled around, I was pretty much graduated. And so because again, I had made this plan, and like, again, I didn't think I was going to the NHL until I was 24 years old. And then I decided, I just made a choice. I'm like, that's where I'm going. And so I set myself up to be, you know, graduated my senior year, because I knew if I signed, I'd be going on they call it an amateur tryout agreement or contract, right? Where you sign and then you go kind of get your feet wet for a couple months with the minor league team. And that's what I did. And then come back to school, graduated, and then my contract kicks in, for the next year. So that was, it happened quick. It happened in a couple days. I was playing in NCAA, and then I was playing in the American Hockey League, again, a few days later. So it happened quick.
Was it cool to have Vancouver sign you to a deal or be a part, reach out to you when you were a fan of them growing up?
Yeah, it's so crazy how it worked out. I mean, out of 30 teams, that's the team, right? So it's pretty crazy for sure. They were one of the first teams that came to me. I mean, I had such a good senior year. I had quite a few interests and, a handful of contract offers, but theirs was the best, and just an opportunity to go play in my home province. Obviously, my home team was awesome. So it's funny, like I remember calling my parents when I signed my contract, and like, again, no one really understood, I guess, the interest I was getting, like, because I never told anyone anything, because I was just, nothing's happened for sure, so I didn't want to say anything. And I called my parents, and they like legit thought I was joking. Like they had no idea. And I said, no. I was like, I kind of told you I was getting some interest from some pro teams. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of played that down a bit. Like, I just signed with Vancouver. And they were like, good one. And I was like, no, I actually did. And they still didn't believe me. And they thought I was, messing with them, obviously. But so, yeah, it was funny how it worked out. And yeah, again, I mean, I could have signed like out east, or who knows, other teams were interested too. And I could end up like in Nashville, and just, it's funny how life works sometimes. And yeah, I ended up in Vancouver, and it was cool.
So was it more about the team or maybe the financial aspect? Or was it just being close to home? That was
Yeah, it was a little, there's an element of everything. Yeah, you want to kind of balance maybe financial and opportunity too, right? I mean,
yep.
That was the thing. Vancouver was a powerhouse team at the time, so I knew I was going into, a stacked team. But I mean, the financial side, they offered me a lot more money than anyone, and I was like, scrapping by to get my beer money in college. So I was like, well, that's hard to say no to. So, and then the fact that it's my home team, I was like, yeah, let's do it. So a little bit of everything, but again, there's always a trade-off versus opportunity, and how well the team's doing. Because if you're on a good team, I mean, this is more leading up to the NHL, but again, you can go be the big fish in a small pond, or vice versa, right? So there's trade-offs to both, and both can work. So I could have maybe signed, with the team that was in the bottom 10 in the league, and maybe jumped right into like even maybe a third line role or something, who knows. But yeah, I mean, again, the financial aspect and just the opportunity to play, at home essentially was kind of trumped everything at that point.
In your first year as a rookie, what was the most rewarding experience you got out of that first year?
I would have had to be my call up. I was called up I think my first game was the 18th of December. So that was cool. Just, kind of, again, calling my family and say, like, it happened, like, I'm going up, and, getting everyone there. Vancouver Hockey Night in Canada. We played the Maple Leafs. So that was obvious. That was probably my, my best memory. And then a couple days later, I scored my goal against you guys in St. Louis. So, yeah, it was funny, like how the game, it's almost easier sometimes in the NHL. A lot of guys will tell you that too, where my first game I was nervous, and you kind of just settle in. But the second game, I think I even hit a post in the third period, and I'm like, man, I could have 2 goals here. And again, I wasn't a goal scorer, but it was just one of those games that I felt good, and got my goal. And yeah, it was cool how things worked out.
Did it ever feel like a dream that you were in that arena with all those fans watching and you're playing? But did it ever feel that, is this real? Is this really happening?
Yeah, well, so for me, I was so big on the visualization stuff, so I had already seen that a million times. So it kind of just it brought me back to that, and it it wasn't really a dream because I had already seen it so much. So again, it was so vivid for me to like live in that moment, and just I kind of brought me back to that, and just I've been here, like this is where I was going. So it was really cool, and just to see it come to fruition, right?
When you scored your first goal against my team, the St. Louis Blues, how did that feeling feel for you? Like, what was your reaction? Were you like, wow, this is the
Yeah, I think
first
I
of
blacked
many,
out a little.
hopefully?
Yeah, I think I blacked out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I just threw it on net. I mean, it looks like maybe I set it up to purposely put it 5-hole, but I caught it and just threw it on net, and um, I mean, you still know when it goes in, and yeah, again, I was obviously ecstatic, and I don't even know. I think I did some goofy celebration with my stick in my hand at the same time, but um, yeah, it was definitely surreal, and for it to happen in my second game was really cool. So
You talked about earlier that you were a hitter and fighting. When you got in, I mean, this is probably a weird question, but your first fight in the NHL, is it like still like where you're like, okay, let's do this? Because when someone searches you online, usually it's like fight, fight, fight. And it's kind of like, I don't know, if does he like to be known for that when people are searching for him? Like, do you like people searching and that's what they're finding out?
well, that's what I have to tell my kid. He's almost 6, and he's like, he grasped that I played now, and he's like, Daddy, I want to watch more videos. And it's like, yeah, I do what everyone does. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I should show him that one, that one, that one, or that one. I like scroll down to my few goals I ever scored. I mean, I'll let him see the odd one, but there's some ones that are, I'm bleeding all over the place, and I was like, well, maybe he's not ready for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was just my role. Again, I did what I had to do to make it, and that was part of it. Um, so yeah, I mean, going back to your question about the first fight, I always did better when it was an organic spur of the moment type of thing, right? Versus the premeditated square off at
Mhm.
center. Um, I mean, I don't think I lost many the other way, and I lost a lot more with the square off, right? Because you're thinking about it, and you're not really. I'm not like a mad guy, so you'd have to get punched in the face a few times before you wake up, and sometimes that's too late, right? And no, anyways, so that game it was against Philadelphia. I fought Sean O'Donnell, who was a big D man, and he was a lot older at the time. I think he was probably like in his mid 30s, and I went to the net and we kind of got into it, and I dropped my gloves, and I he slipped on his stick, I think, and I hit him on the way down, maybe a little bit late, and he was pissed. And so we went to the box, and so I mean, I don't think we didn't get a fighting major for that, but I mean, we essentially fought. Like, it just was really quick, and I hit him with a late one, and he didn't like that, and so we got out of the box and squared off. And I kind of fought that one a little bit smarter, stayed in tight, did pretty well, and yeah, I felt good about. I got my feet wet there, and then the rest is history.
Do you ever, when you ever go into the penalty box, do you ever think, was it really worth it? Like, was getting this penalty worth going for? I guess, did you always go in the box for the fighting, or sometimes they take you off?
Yeah, I can't say I ever had that feeling of questioning whether it was worth it.
It's kind of like in the moment, you're like, the adrenaline's going, and
Yeah. No, there was never that thought of like, oh, should I have done that, or anything like that. I mean, if you take a bad tripping penalty, then that's different. Getting in a scrap. I mean, that's my job. So
yeah.
that's part of it. That's part of the job description. So yeah, there was never an element of me questioning if I should have done that. Or I mean, if I lost the fight, then I might be, yeah, like, okay, what where did it go wrong, maybe? Or is it the fact that this guy is like 50 pounds heavier than me, or is it did I make a mistake or whatever, right?
What would you say is the most memorable accomplishment in your NHL career, or something that stands out to you?
I mean, the first goal is pretty tough to beat. It would have been, I mean, my first year is when we went to the finals and lost to the Bruins.
Okay.
So that would have been
Yeah.
that definitely would have been the biggest accomplishment. But it was, I mean, it was really cool to live that experience. I didn't play any playoff games. Like we came up as Black Aces for the last couple rounds there, and I almost got inserted in one game in the finals. They ended up putting in another centerman, but so I was again like just that close. We win that game 7, and if I get in the game, it's like boom, there's your ring and name on the cup, and it's yeah, a lot of guys can come. I mean, come close. Some guys have come closer than that, even, right? So, yeah, I know it's just funny how it works, and funny how the story goes. But yeah, that would be probably my first goal. I would say would be my most memorable, and um, yeah, I would say that's probably in the top.
As you're playing, do you ever worry about being traded, ending of your contract, things like that?
Well, for me, it was tough just trying to become a full time NHLer, right? Like when you're on a two-way contract or even just like at a league minimum contract, a lot of times you're coming to the rink not knowing if you're going to be there that day or the next day, right? There's always competition. There's always an extra forward. There's always the young draft pick that they want to get in a lineup or bring in a veteran. So there's always moving parts. So yeah, for me and a lot of like the fourth line guys, that you got to prove yourself every day, right? And every day is kind of a tryout. So yeah, that can take a toll on you too. And just, you got to try and stay in the moment and not think about, am I going to be here tomorrow or
Mhm.
the next day? Because yeah, naturally you want to do that. Um, so, I mean, I remember when I finally got my letter to get a place in Vancouver, and essentially being like, you're here for a while, like you made the team, basically go get a place. And then of course I got put on waivers and picked up like a week after that. So it doesn't yeah, that's another story, but it it's a business, and at the end of the day you're never really safe unless you have like a no move clause, right? But so yeah, I mean, there's that element of it's professional sports, and you got to prove yourself every day, and that's just the nature of it.
Was it hard when you got that, or you were picked up on the waiver and now you have to go to another team, basically?
Yeah, that obviously wasn't, my intent was to stay in Vancouver. I had my job that I was doing pretty well, and they wanted to give another guy a look, and I got the short end of the stick. But it's funny how things in life work, right? It's when you're going through something that you don't want to go through, and you think it's maybe the end of the world, but it's actually where you need to be in it. Because when I went to Washington, it worked out how it was supposed to work out, and I really enjoyed Washington, and it was great. So it was the way it was supposed to be, and yeah, I kind of just embraced that, and yeah, so.
What was the biggest difference from the two experiences, from when you were on Vancouver and then when you were on Washington? Or did you kind of have a similar journey in a way as a player?
As a player, it was similar because again, I had my role and my job, and I mean, you always want to expand that, but as a player, it was similar, but the teams and the atmosphere and the organization was very different at the time. Like Vancouver is sort of maybe what you would expect. I mean, at least at the time, this was a long time ago now, but it was very professional and regimented and what you would expect, right? You'd go to the rink, you have your healthy breakfast, and you do your workout, and you go to the rink and you watch a movie, and you talk with like the sleep doctors and the psychologists, and there's all these resources, right? And then I get to Washington, and it was very pretty lax. I wouldn't say country club, but it was definitely a lot more lax. Guys kind of just did their own thing, and I think it was a little too far that way. And then obviously when Barry Trotz came in, it got a lot better, and the team dialed it in. And then of course they won the cup shortly after that. So um, yeah, at first it was very, very different. But I think now, like I got guys that I know that play on their cap still, and it's changed for the better, and the culture there is a lot better. It was too lax when I first came there, and so it's changed. But yeah, like I said, for the better.
Was it hard to know that were you thinking about retiring, or what led to your retirement from hockey?
No, it was an injury. So I got a neck injury. It's actually the same thing that Jack Eichel's going through. So I had that fusion surgery because I got hit from behind in a game and blew my discs up and had all these issues that that I had to get fixed. And I had another year on my deal left, but I came back in around Christmas time, and it was a little too soon, and it was just nowhere where it needed to be. And that essentially put me out with doctors opinions and advice, and they just said, yeah, I mean, you can't play with it stiff like that. You're going to have too much of a risk of herniation adjacent to that fusion, right? So yeah, I mean, I mean, I retired at 30, so I would have liked to still been playing, but that's just not the way it goes down sometimes, right? So I was lucky to play my 5.5 years. I mean, I was hurt for a lot of it, but it was a good run.
Looking at post NHL, your rehab on your neck and stuff, was it a long process, or are you still taking it slow today?
Yeah, it was pretty long. Like it was a six and a bit months of rehab. But I mean, that's just like for me to get back playing. Like I work on it even today. Just I mean, so you definitely have to keep up on keeping the strength and the mobility up. Like I have not as much mobility as I once did, and that can cause stiffness and pain. And so it's just you got to manage that, right? And that's why I think the whole like Eichel situation was kind of crazy, where he couldn't get the surgery he wanted to. And I mean, we could probably talk about that one forever too. But yeah, like so again, the disc replacement. I mean, yeah, if you would have told me like you're not going to play again, I might have ended up getting that one. But I'm sure the technology's changed a lot. This is 7-8 years ago, so
Mhm.
I'm sure it's changed quite a bit. But anyways, that was how it ended for me, unfortunately. But it's the way it goes down.
Were you worried about what was next for you? Now I'm not playing hockey anymore, and now I have to do something else.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's you go. Every guy goes through it, right? And I didn't make a bunch of money where I could just chill out and soak up the sun every day. I had to do something. So yeah, I mean, I was like pre-med in college essentially. So I was like, do I go be a doctor? That was some of interest, but then I was like, well, I'm going to be like 48 by the time I finish that. So let's not go down that road. And yeah, and I had always my interest kind of shifted to finance and investing, and so that's what I did for a couple years after I did wealth management for a few years, and ultimately didn't love that. But again, that's all you can do is kick open doors, and there's only one way to find out if it's what you want to do, and that's to do it right. And that wasn't it. And then life started happening, and things got pretty real. Like I was going through a bunch of personal stuff and family issues, and things like that kind of led me down a bit of a tough path there for a bit. And that was again part of the whole journey, and that's what's kind of led me to where I am now. And so again, I'm thankful that it happened the way it did. And again, I didn't think it would be that in the moment, right? But so this latest venture with everything has been really good. And I for some reason in my life, I just take the long way around, and it's served me pretty well. So
You don't have to explain those dark past stuff, but you talked about how it's made you stronger in a way. If someone that's listening to this is kind of going through something like that, what would you tell them to keep going, persevere, keep growing? Things will get better over time, things like that.
yeah, I mean, like I owe, and I tell this to everyone, that every success I've had or high point in my life has always been preceded by like very very dark low or adversity, right? Like I was really badly burnt when I was going into my last year at junior, and that's a lot of what my story in my book's about. Of my career was over, is what I was told. And what that allowed me to get in terms of like my mindset and that grit to push on. And then even after retiring from an injury, and then, I mean, the personal stuff, I don't mind talking about it. Like, it's going to be in my book, or, it's
Yeah.
just like, you lose that identity and that sense of self. Like, I was a hockey player for 30 years, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now you're not that. And then, I was going through a divorce, my dad was sick, and like all these things just kept happening like right after one another, right? So yeah, it was a tough time. Like, I wasn't in a great spot. And again, like, I just look where I am now. And again, I wouldn't be here if I didn't go through that, right? So I mean, I read a lot of books, and there's lots of good quotes, but I mean, I always like the one and like some of the analogies. But don't be the guy that dies in the desert next to the oasis. Like, just when you want to give up, sometimes you just, I mean, not sometimes, you just keep getting up, because you might just be really close to that top of the mountain, so to speak, right? Or and like with adversity, that's when you have that immense opportunity for growth, right? Where, and I think that's what I've noticed now too, like with coaching athletes, and especially with the younger kids, it's adversity is like, it's crippling. And really, if you reframe it and you use it to your advantage, and trust me, like, I've been there, it seems like the world's against you, and like, why are you going through this stuff? But there's a reason behind it all. And if you frame it differently, and trust that you're going to look back one day. And people always tell me, like, they look at me like I'm crazy when I say they're going through some stuff, right? And like some bad things or some adversity. Like, you're going to look back one day and be like, man, I couldn't have done anything without that.
Yep.
So and it's so true. And like, I've lived it, and I even studied at Brown with the visualization mindset and the plasticity of the brain and all that stuff, right? That it's super powerful. And so yeah, I mean, that I would say that to anyone, is adversity is your friend. And um, you may not know it at the time, but you appreciate it at some point. So
With coaching, what's your biggest joy you get out of that opportunity when you're working with athletes or your clients?
yeah, it's just seeing that transformation that these people go through. And a lot of it is about squashing that like performance anxiety, and confidence and self-doubt is such a problem. I think more so these days, because again, like, I think we touched on it briefly as young kids. Like, when I was 12, 13, 14, like, I didn't have anxiety. I just was a kid, and
Mhm.
I like played on dirt piles, and then I played hockey like in my spare time. And I had snowball fights and a loving family, and like, I didn't really think about pressure to perform. Or but now, like, these young kids, it's just, they get it from everywhere, right? They get it from social media, they might get it from their parents, they put more pressure on themselves, because there's, again, like with these platforms and social media, they see what other people are doing, right? And it just causes this unhealthy pressure. So I think that's the biggest reward, is just reframing people, and opening up to the world of like visualization and mindset, and being okay with adversity. And then you start to see that like crippling anxiety start to go away, right? So that's definitely the most rewarding, is just helping people at the end of the day. And that's what's really been rewarding.
As you were talking about anxiety and kids nowadays are having that pressure, I was thinking back to my child. I'm like, I was the same way. I was just having fun and stuff. And I don't
Yeah,
think it got to the pressure part until I believe like the end of high school, where, okay, what college are you going to? Is
yeah,
people are going to this college and you're going to this one. Oh, you're not good enough because you couldn't get to that one. And I think that, and then college, because there's so like social media plays a big part in that. And people are like judging and commenting and things like that. And it's like, take away social media and this world would be completely different.
yeah. Like, again, like, social media can be a useful tool for, I
Yes.
mean, for your podcast, or for my business, or whatever. It can be useful, or building a brand and whatever. But I mean, there's some good in it. But like, again, we keep going, things have gone too far this one way, right? And it's caused a lot of problems with some of these younger kids, I think, for sure. that we see now, right?
When you're working with clients, do they see a lot of value in what you give because you've experienced similar things that they may have gone through and things like that, instead of them working with a coach who's never been in their shoes before?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they relate to those experiences, right? I mean, for me, what was really cool is I had this experience in the burn unit in Vancouver, and I visualized where I wanted to go, and that allowed me to. I mean, I know it allowed me to heal faster and even just get back to playing hockey. And then when I got to Brown, I started studying that, and I took neuroscience and human biology, and started learning about the biology of everything and the plasticity of the brain. And it was like, man, like I'm learning about like what I experienced. It was really cool, right? And just having my experiences after hockey and just even making it to the NHL. Like I was never supposed to make it to the NHL.
Mhm.
Again, like I was 24 years old, no one knew who I was. And yeah, so when I work with people and I tell them, like, especially like my experience with the burn unit, and they're like, whoa, man, that's some real stuff, right? Like it was pretty tough times. And now, like, some of the people I work with, like, they get crippled if like they make one mistake. And it's just, okay, let's bring it back, like, to having fun. And it's okay to make mistakes, and we learn from the mistakes are your friend, not your enemy. And um I'm not advocating for playing with fire or anything, like, when I tell them my story. But again, like, I wouldn't have got to where I got to without that experience. And so just relating it to that, right? And yeah, people really resonate there. And again, validating, like, the feelings they have around their mistakes, and that's good, but let's reframe it, and use it, as a useful, and building a confidence through learning and things like that, right?
When someone reads your book, what are you hoping the reader learns about your story or the mission that you want to tell when they're reading?
Yeah, it's funny. So when I started writing the book, it was strictly just a memoir,
Mhm.
and it took different forms as I went. Like, again, I was between these jobs, not really sure what I was going to do, and this book was always a side project, just because my story, some people knew about it. Most people that I knew didn't really know, like, the ins of, and what I actually went through. So again, it was a side project. I decided with COVID, I'm like, okay, this is a perfect time to just crank this out. So I did, and I spent about 6 months writing it. But yeah, it took different forms as I went. It started as a memoir, and then about halfway through, I had like a light bulb moment, and I'm like, this is what I need to do, is teach people what I've learned about the power of the human spirit, and visualization specifically, and what it gave me in terms of that grit and that relentlessness. And just like, I just refused to give up, and like, distort that reality. Like, that's not just because the doctors are saying this, like, it's not a good enough reason for me to stop, really, is so the book is really about my story, but it's pulling in the tools with visualization, and how adversity can be your friend if you just, again, you don't give up, and you use it to learn and get better, and reframe that. So yeah, there's tools as well as just the story in it. So
When you were writing at the time for those 6 months and you're reflecting on certain aspects of your life, did it kind of trigger different memories or kind of different emotions that you had, and you kind of viewed it differently at where you are today than when you were during that time?
yeah, absolutely. It was a really therapeutic thing to write that all down. And you go through, you relive all those emotions, right, that you live there. But like you said, you're reliving it from your older self now. And
Mhm.
yeah, like, I've changed a lot as a person, as we all do, right? And reflecting there of what your values are now, maybe that they're different than they were when you went through that stuff. So yeah, it really changes your perspective. But like, for me, it was good because you kind of just look back and you're like, man, I did that. Like, it kind of reinstills that, that fight and that power of what you really can accomplish if you really want to, right? So it's always good to kind of relive that. But I mean, again, like it's had an aspect of like a journaling type of feeling, right? Where it's really therapeutic of just writing and living through those emotions and feelings and, you know, just sitting with that. And yeah, no, it was a great experience.
I think that's so true. I think a lot of people, when they write it down, they kind of, it's therapeutic in a way. And I think
Yeah.
when I do that same thing when I'm setting goals or what did I accomplish for the day, things like that. And I'm looking back at these notes and I'm like, wow, okay, I got something going. I'm doing what I'm trying to do or want to accomplish. So I see the value that you, when you're talking about that. And it just shows that different ways have people have different ways to process things, and your way was to write it down and kind of relive those moments, and now you're ready to share it for the world to see.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of it too was I mean, a few things. One was just being okay with getting vulnerable and telling my story, because I was never one to share it, right? I just kept things close to the vest. And so that was the first step, was just being okay with sharing it and talking about myself, really. And but yeah, and then the other, not just writing it down, but I mean, for me, again, like it all comes back to the visualization practice that I had, and just sharing that, and you know, tools how to do that effectively, and how it can, you know, play such an important part, you know, in your life. So
Have you ever thought about getting back into hockey? Maybe not as a player, but in like a coaching, a different kind of role? Or are you satisfied with where you are today and kind of that was a part of my story and I'm ready to continue towards the future?
yeah, I never had a desire to really get into the coaching or that at all. I mean, my long-term vision is to expand that and maybe consult with, you know, different teams, whether it be professional or whoever, hopefully everyone, right? Just because I think it's such an underserved, you know, part of really every business and every aspect of life. But I mean, right now it's primarily athletics for me, and working that angle, right? But I mean, this is true for everything in life. So yeah, I never had any desire to coach or anything like that, but you know, I would, you know, my plan is to expand this to other professional teams, and maybe it's a consultant or whatever. And just, you know, mental health in general has gotten so much, you know, attention, and rightfully so, right? And this would fall under that, you know, to some capacity, of just how powerful our minds really are, right? And using that. I mean, we all train physically, and like as an athlete, you know, you work on your skills, you go to the gym, and but this is, a lot of guys don't do the mental stuff, and it's the biggest bang for your buck, is what I always say, because it doesn't take a long time. You can go spend hours in the gym, but like the visualization and the mindset stuff takes, you know, 10 minutes a day kind of thing. You know, you do it a couple times a day, and especially when you're doing like the movements in your brain, like your brain doesn't know the difference if you're like performing one of the exercises or skills versus physically doing it, right? It doesn't know the difference. So again, it's such an important aspect of just rewiring those pathways in your brain, flipping that mindset and everything like that, right? So no, I mean, to answer your question, I'm super stoked where I'm at now, and I'm just working on expanding this and bringing more attention to it.
You mentioned a little bit just there, but what does the future look like for you personally and professionally? What are you wanting to accomplish personally and professionally in the next few years?
Yeah, well, my book's going to be out sometime next year, which will be exciting. So I don't have a definitive date on that, but yeah, like that'll be really cool to get that out. It's been a fun project, and then yeah, like expanding this coaching business. Like for me, it's been busy and it's been great, and I'd like to, you know, expand that to maybe groups of kids and you know, different sports teams as a consultant or something like that, right? And then with the speaking, really, you know, that's been a bit on the back burner for me right now. Just, I mean, I'm too busy with the coaching and stuff like that, but speaking is one of the only things I've done since I've retired that you get that same nervous excitement and adrenaline before. It's kind of like before a game.
Mhm.
So I really love that part of it, right? Where it's you're nervous, and then you go in and things settle in, and then you're kind of off to the races. Right. So that's really cool. I like that. And again, you're just, at the end of the day, it's just about sharing this message about, the human mind and grit and adversity and visualization, and why we all need it, and things like that. Right. So again, it's just another platform to do so. So yeah, that's where I'll be in the next, year, and after that.
And that year is going to come quick. I mean,
Uh,
it just seems like these days just go
it is.
fly by.
Yeah, it just goes by faster as we get older, for sure. Yeah.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Yeah, I would just say, and that's what I tell a lot of my clients, is just trust the journey. I mean, you're here, you want to go here, and then your life is a movie, and that's what I teach all my clients. So what does your movie look like? And again, you want to go there, and trust that journey. What does that journey look like? And again, understand that it's not going to be a straight line. There's going to be some tough times in there. But that's what's going to propel you there, if you just, again, reframe it, and you can't give up. And because when you trust where you're going, and you have that, such purpose, that, again, you won't stop until you get there. So it's just about trusting that process and that journey, and it might take a while. And that's sometimes the part that people aren't okay with. So you need to get okay with, you know it's going to take a while. It might take some time, and that's okay, right? And just trust that journey, I would say, is the big part.
My life's just an obstacle course. You never know what barriers you're going to have to get through. But like you said, it's not a straight. And that's why I always use an
No.
obstacle course, because I'm going jumping across ledges or
Yeah.
balance beam and stuff like that. But I feel like that I grow as an individual each challenge I face. And I enjoy that process, because if it was an easy road, you don't learn. You don't
No,
get the knowledge out of it.
you have to challenge yourself. I totally agree. And I mean, again, like, you don't hear the stories of the sixes and the sevens. You hear the stories of the ones and the tens, and the ones and the tens. And
Yep.
I'd way rather have that, than this. Uh, but the caveat is, there's a lot more ones than there are tens, right? But the tens
Mhm.
are just that sweet that you're willing to do it again, right? So yeah, again, it's just trusting that journey, and trusting that, the ones they might suck, but they're going to allow you to get to that 10, right? So
Well, Aaron, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
yeah, thanks, Alex. It was a pleasure. Chat soon.